All right, welcome everybody to week 25 of World War II Heroes and Literature. So excited to talk about the final chapters of the Battle of Midway and talk about some of your favorite things, things that you learned, things that you investigated as you were reading. If you weren't here earlier, you'll see that I have the American flag, I have the Portuguese flag. What Well-Educated Heart Academy this week, the student government has designated this week as Well-Educated Heart Academy Spirit Week. So I'm going to share my screen and show you where you can find it for future classes if you want to participate. Let's see. All right, I think I'm sharing. So if you go on Mighty Networks and you go to the app and you navigate to the student events and activities and then click on events here, you can see today is Well-Educated Heart Spirit Week Patriotism Day. And so if you click on it, you'll find a little bit more detail. If you don't have a class on Tuesday, feel free to post a picture below of your wonderful Patriotism Day costume. And so it says, wear the colors of your country. And so for me, this is my Patriotism Day costume. If you're walking around Portugal or really anywhere in Europe and you see someone wearing a baseball cap, then that's like your bright light saying, I'm American. And so that's my costume. I am dressed as an American in Portugal today, with the Portuguese flag here, American flag here. And so for the rest of the week, if you guys have other classes and you want to participate, tomorrow is Twins Day. And so you can have twins. You can be twins. And then on Thursday, Neon Glow Day, which is cool. I don't know how we would do neon glow on a Zoom meeting, but maybe to take pictures. And then Friday's Camouflage Day. And so if you guys have other classes, you can participate, and I guess dress up and have fun with that. In public schools, a lot of times they'll have spirit weeks and they'll have like pajama day or superhero day or 80s day or something like that where people dress up. So trying to have some fun like that here, which is pretty cool. Anyway, so we'll that's why I have this background, and why I'm wearing a baseball cap today. I'm being patriotic in my support of the Boston Red Sox. All right. So for today, we are going to talk about a few of our favorite things. We'll talk about what we learned according to our research. As I mentioned last week, one of the feedback that I've received in past classes over the years has been sometimes a desire to go into deeper topics. And so one of the ways that I've implemented that this year, or tried to address that, is oftentimes, almost every class, we'll begin the class with a thoughtful discussion question from myself, or earlier in the semester from Ben, my son, who's now on a mission for my church. And so that was sort of my way to make sure that we got into a little bit of a deeper discussion to start talking about how we can apply these lessons and how we can learn from history so that we don't repeat it, so that we can think about how it applies to us specifically, and get into some of the deeper topics. And so today I'm going to be going back in time a little bit before I did a little bit of a deeper discussion on something that might relate to us and sort of the deeper lessons that we can learn. And we're just going to jump into a few of my favorite things and according to my research, and talk about what you guys thought was really special about Midway, what you liked, what we can learn from it, and really that you guys will be guiding the discussion more today than we do in other weeks. So that's what we have on tap for today. Excuse me. So for next week, the reading will be finishing the Battle of Midway. We still have one more chapter, and we have the epilogue. And the epilogue is really sort of a nice summary of where we went, like from the beginning of this battle to the end of this battle, how things changed in the Pacific. And it really is a nice summary of the whole book. So don't skip the epilogue. Chapter 16 is relatively short, and then don't skip the epilogue. And then we're going to start reading Flags of Our Fathers. Lincoln, go ahead.
Guys, read the appendixes too. Those are good. And then, is that how you pluralize appendix? I don't know, but
Appendices.
yeah, okay. Those two. Um, but those are very interesting too. So read those.
Yes, do it. I mean, all the information I think is super interesting. But for the assigned portion, chapter 16, the epilogue, and Lincoln has also assigned the optional appendices to read through those. So thank you, Lincoln. So that will finish the Battle of Midway. Normally, we do a Kahoot at the end of a book. This time, we will not. We're running out of time. And so we'll fit in a Kahoot probably after Flags of Our Fathers. And then we're going to sprint to the finish line, which is appropriate. After the Flags of Our Fathers, we're going to read Unbroken. And it's appropriate to call it a sprint to the finish line because Louis Zamperini was a runner and a track athlete, really fast, and he's the hero of our final book, Unbroken. And so anyway, for next week, Flags of Our Fathers. If and I'll have more details of this when I post the homework. If you're reading the original, your readings for the next 2 or 3 weeks are going to be a little bit longer than the rest. In audiobook form, the original I think is 12 hours long and the young readers edition is like 7. And so there's going to be a little bit more reading in the original. From the original, he cuts out a lot of the kind of more gruesome details. For example, in these first 3 chapters, one of the chapters, I guess it's not gruesome details, but it's just one of the chapters, you get to know the different flag raisers who raised the flag on Iwo Jima. And he goes into a lot more detail about their background, their history, their like, for example, one of them is a Pima Indian, and he goes into a lot more detail of the Pima and their culture and their traditions and stuff. Whereas in the Young Readers edition, some of those details are just kind of glossed over. And so there's a couple of different things. So one of the boys, one of the flag raisers, was sort of a troublemaker and did practical jokes. In the Young Readers edition, it just sort of describes that as his personality. In the original, it goes into detail where he was like shooting bottle rockets at people and he let cows onto somebody's front porch where they just caused issues and stuff. So, I mean, you're not missing anything by reading the Young Readers edition, just some of the details of the stories and things that at this point we haven't gotten into the battle yet. So the more gruesome details of the battle will be left out in the Young Readers edition. The original will still have it. And so for that, we will still be probably skipping some pages, or I'll be sending emails out to parents letting them know if you're reading the original version on this page, watch out for these details that we won't be talking about. We don't necessarily need to read, but in fact, I might create a questionnaire for you guys to fill out this week, just to let me know who's reading the original, who's reading the Young Readers edition, so that I can make sure I get that information to your parents and you in good enough time. Justice, go ahead.
I was looking on like kind of Audible and Libby, which I use. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but I can't find any Young Readers edition, so it's probably
Okay.
fine, just original like you're talking about. So yeah.
It is on Audible. I've not
Okay.
checked Libby. On Audible, and I think it might be like $7 or $8 if I remember right. It might even
Uh,
be could even be free with an Audible description. I'll take a look. I can send that information out
that's probably a
too.
good thing to send out. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. And so Lincoln, go ahead.
Is so I already have the original edition. Should we get the young readers edition or just stick with the original one and just skip the stuff?
That's up to you. When I originally posted the book lists, I had included the original book. because I was not aware at that time that there was a young readers edition. I think one of the parents reached out to me maybe in October and said, "Are we getting the young readers edition or the original?" And I did not know there was a young readers edition for that one. And so if you have the original, probably just keep that, and I'll tell you what you can skip. And you'll be um, it'll be a little bit longer readings, and you'll have a little bit more detail. But if you have the young readers edition, you won't be missing too much. Really, you won't be missing anything.
No.
It just sort of summarizes things instead of gives you the details of it. But anyway, so for next week, the original to be chapters 1 through 3. The Young Readers Edition, chapters 1 through 10, which covers the exact same amount, just in a little bit of a shorter time. And I'm not sure why they break the chapters down into like 10 chapters instead of 3, but that's what it'll be. So for the next few weeks, while we're reading Flags of Our Fathers, I'll give you 2 different reading assignments. One, if you're reading the original, another, if you're reading the Young Readers Edition. We will be talking about things probably from the level of detail of the Young Readers Edition. And if there is any significant detail that's not in the Young Readers Edition that is in the original, I will describe that in class of what kind of things that weren't in the Young Readers Edition that might still be important. So you'll still get the information. Don't feel like you're missing out if you're on the Young Readers Edition, because we'll make sure you get it. I will make sure you do. And then our supplemental content will be about a 50-minute sort of documentary style video about the Battle of Guadalcanal. That was immediately after Midway. Things started to shift. So we'll even go into this. Right before Midway happened, this was the height of the Japanese expansion. So they had started here in Japan. They had gone into Manchuria. So this was before Pearl Harbor, and they started going into China and taking over other places in Asia. But then after Pearl Harbor happened, they started just continually expanding, taking over these islands out here in the Philippines. They were just taking everything with the Kido Butai, as we've talked about. Just to kind of put it into perspective a little bit more, here's the whole Pacific Ocean. And so this is a zoomed in portion of it, but it comes all the way almost to Hawaii over here. And it's just this circle from Australia to China to the Aleutian Islands up here by Alaska down to Hawaii. And so looking at this map, which is a little bit of a different perspective too, you have all this area down to Australia, coming up here to Hawaii to the Aleutian Islands. So they have control over, I think it's probably at least half of this part of the Pacific, not the East Pacific area down here, but this Pacific part of the Pacific Ocean, they have control over it. And that takes us into the Battle of Midway. And then Midway happens, and then America starts deciding, okay, we're going to have to do this by island hopping, one island at a time. And so we're going to begin this island hopping. And the first one that they go to is Guadalcanal. And so the Flags of Our Fathers book really focuses on Iwo Jima, which happens down the road. It might be 3 or 4 islands later, because they have Guadalcanal, Tarawa, I think a couple others, and then we get to Iwo Jima. And so it's just this pushing this area of expansion back little by little, one island at a time. And so the supplemental content for this week will be the Battle of Guadalcanal. It's the first amphibious landing that we did after Midway in the Pacific Theater, where you just load a whole bunch of Marines onto a ship and unload them on the beach. It's a pretty scary way to just arrive and start fighting. But it was not quite like D-Day at this one. I think they caught the Japanese by surprise, and they were not fired upon when they first landed. But that's not the case for every time they land moving forward. Anyway, so that's where we are at with the Battle of Midway. One thing I also want to say, now that I'm thinking about it, when we get into books like Flags of Our Fathers, excuse me, the authors often will have quotes of the Marines. And sometimes the quotes are a little bit more colorful. Also, the Marines often refer to the Japanese as Japs or Nips. And because I think the author is quoting the Marines, he keeps those words in the content. But just for today, both of those terms are now considered derogatory based on their use of World War II, sort of became a racial slur. And so just beware. You're going to read it in the books and you might hear it in videos, supplemental content. I think they probably are maybe they aren't in the videos anymore, if they were in the first place, but just in your own vocabulary, in your own writing messages and things, just say Japanese instead, because the other two words are now are a racial slur. So it could be offensive to people. So just be careful with those. That's just one thing from the book that the author doesn't say, and you don't get that from the readings because some of the people are talking about it so often, saying those terms for the referring to the Japanese that anyway, you wouldn't understand from reading the book that they're racial slurs. So just avoid saying those two terms when we're discussing it. All right, so moving on, a few of my favorite things. I think first, Mason and Knightley, maybe you guys could give us a quick report of your field trip, your family reunion trip, I guess, and what you saw, things that you learned.
Yeah, so this last weekend we were down in South Carolina for a family reunion, and as part of our dad's work trip, and we found out that the Yorktown Museum was there. And because we were reading out about it, we decided to check it out, see what it was, and it's the Yorktown. It's not the Yorktown that was in the Battle of Midway because that one was sunk, but it's a Yorktown. It was named after the Yorktown that was sunk. I can't remember when it um came out or was finished building, but yeah, it was really cool. They had a lot of. It was really cool to see the layout of an aircraft carrier. I think we've seen one before, but it was a long time ago. Cool to see the living spaces of the men. The flight deck was really cool. It was just a really cool experience. I don't know if Knightley has anything to add, but
Yeah, I'd just say it was super fun to walk around and see all the aircraft. And since it was not necessarily a World War II carrier, they had a lot of more modern aircraft there as well, like some of Vietnam War and Korean War aircraft. But what was nice is they had in the hangar, they had a lot of World War II era aircraft that was fun to see and to learn about. And just going through the carrier and seeing how it would have really been like to live on a carrier really made me uh respect the soldiers more.
yeah, one thing to add that was pretty cool that they decided to do. They also had an option where you could stay the night on the carrier. We didn't do it, but that you can take a field trip with people and sleep on the carrier. I don't know what else they do. They might do meals and whatnot. That's pretty cool.
That is cool. Start putting you to work. You guys are running this. You got to go and do your shift at 2 a.m. That's awesome. How with the flat top, like I don't know, the launching area, was that bigger or smaller than you expected?
For me, I'd say it looks a lot bigger than it does in all the videos being on it. It's really long.
Yeah, that was my impression too. So I don't remember what the name of the one in San Diego is. It doesn't look like Warren's here. Warren lives near the one in San Diego, but I was so impressed with how huge it was. I did not fully appreciate how big these aircraft carriers are, but they're gigantic. And I just with Knightley, what you're saying, I think that this one was created during World War II, um, and so what it saw action in World War II, it also saw action in Vietnam. And so that's probably why they had planes from other generations too, because this aircraft, the one that you guys visited, I think was active for quite a long time before it became a museum. But that's super cool. We need to have a class field trip and go spend the night on this thing. That'd be a lot of fun. Lincoln, go ahead.
Okay, so just because I was curious, I looked it up, and the carrier that's in San Diego is the Essex class carrier, the USS Midway, which technically wasn't in combat during World War II, if I remember correctly. It was going, or was that in use at the end of the war? It was built and finished really late in the war, or right after the war, but it was like the biggest carrier ever built at its time.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I remember being on the carrier, and one of the guys that was giving us a tour had served on the carrier. So, I mean, he wasn't so old that he would have been a World War II vet. But I do remember leaving there thinking, I think if I could have picked anywhere, I think being on an aircraft carrier would have been a pretty place, cool place to be. Just all the action, seeing the planes come and go, the hustle and bustle, I think would have been pretty neat. Unless you're
Yeah.
getting bombed, then it's not that cool. but,
Yeah, it
but
was taken out of service in '92, it sounds like.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense why the tour guide was someone who had served on there, because he was about my dad's age, I think. That's cool. Thank you for looking that up. Brendan, go ahead.
Actually, like a couple years ago, I can't remember how many, but we went on a field trip to San Diego and things, and we actually got to be on this aircraft carrier as well. Um, and you're right, it's absolutely ginormous. Like just walking into the engine room was insane alone, and like knowing we were kind of below the water line made me kind of shiver, thinking of like bumps and torpedoes going off and realizing that the water's coming in and you're below the water line, like just insane.
Yeah. What did you guys think when you were reading about the submarine and as they were diving down and with the depth charges? So a depth charge is a bomb that that starts sinking, and once it reaches a certain depth, so water has pressure, right? And the deeper you go, the more pressure the water has. And so they use that mechanism to set off these depth charges. So once this thing's dropping down and gets to a certain depth, then it sends out this really concussive blast that can bend metal. Was thinking about this time as I read it, how crazy it would be to be in a submarine, not have all the sonar stuff that we have today. And so, whenever they want to find where another boat is, they have to come up to the surface, take a look around. Someone sees them, and then they have to drop down again. And just being underwater so far and having these depth charges causing leaks in your submarine. That was something that I picked up this time that would have been a little bit more harrowing. I think if I were going to be in the Navy, I'd want to be above the surface instead of so far below. But that made me appreciate they were doing a lot of work, just trying to get around and navigate, trying to chase people down. It's pretty interesting to read this time. Owen, go ahead.
Uh, yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I bet like if I was the captain, I'd be like, "Come on, like I'm being hunted by like I found the entire Japanese fleet and then like, oh, gotta go." And then when you
Yeah.
rise back up, you just they're all gone. But then
Yeah.
later after the battle, I wonder if like Wade McCluskey and then told like we saw that destroyer and we followed it and he's like, "Oh, okay." Like, well, what do you know? I wonder if like anybody told him like your actions won the war and I wonder what he would have thought. I wonder if he'd be like, "Oh, well, sweet."
Yeah. I, yeah. I mean, I'm sure he would have been pretty happy with it. And it's so interesting that you bring that up. There's so many little decisions that just worked out, right? One thing led to another. And if you take any one of those things away, then who knows how the day would have turned out. It's so crazy that so many people did so many heroic in the moment, right decision things that it all just sort of worked out in America's favor. And that combination of all of those decisions and just crazy things that were happening led to a victory when we probably shouldn't have. Even though we had the intelligence, I think we had a lot of luck on our side too. Harrison, go ahead.
I used to live in Chicago, and they have this like museum that has the only U-boat we ever captured, and like the U-boat was the German submarine. Submarines are just mind-boggling, and
Yeah.
it was just like it was bigger. They had this massive room, and the U-boat stretched from one wall to the other. I thought it was crazy that our submarine was as big as like a destroyer or something like that. Just this massive thing that had to go underwater. Having a effective submarine would be such a so helpful, especially if you could uh, do it fast. I thought it was interesting how normally a submarine is kind of you just need to sneak up, hit it, and then run. But the Nautilus uh, was more helpful by like keeping that other ship distracted and stuff. Uh, they're very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I agree. It is cool. And so crazy what technology can do to be able to do all of that. Have that big of a ship under the water, just sneaking around. It's crazy. Um, Thank you for that insight. Brendan, go ahead.
If you want to see big submarines, just look up the Russian Typhoon class.
Yeah, yeah. There's some pretty crazy ones since then. And if you really get into uh, submarines, The Hunt for Red October is a pretty interesting, fun movie. But I mean, that's not part of this course, and we don't get into that in this class. But and it's fictional, but really kind of a fun submarine story. So a lot of you guys said your favorite things. Surprising, the Americans had so much fighting spirit, even though most of their attacks on the Kido Butai had little or no effect. They still fought. When so many things were going against them, when it felt like, and I think the numbers even started showing that being a pilot, your odds of surviving a battle and the war were very, very low based on the numbers that we were seeing of this many planes go out, this small percentage of them come back, this many planes go out. And so I what did you guys think of the pilots? Would you want to be a pilot? We talked about before if you wanted to fly a dive bomber or a torpedo bomber or a fighter. Now, after seeing some of the numbers, what do you think? What do you think of the fighting spirit of the pilots, everybody involved?
Heroic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a better word for it, right? They're putting everything on the line. And I thought it was so cool. And I guess we'll get into this in chapter 16 because the battle's not quite over yet. There's still a little bit more time left in the book talking about the battle. So you have guys like Richard Best who already dropped bombs on an aircraft carrier. He comes back and it's getting late in the day and he's like begging to go back out. We know where their carrier is. Let us go. Let us go. And they finally let them go, and he's able to drop another bomb on another one. So it makes it two for the day. He and one other pilot had two hits, confirmed hits from the day. But it's just so even when you're, I mean, I made the comment, so I think Knightley posted that, and I made a follow-up comment in the Mighty Networks apps that do you think that having the radio silence helped in that case so that they didn't have the minute-to-minute updates of what was happening and how things weren't that effective to some point of that day? Or do you think it wouldn't have had any effect? And then I just think about, like Richard Best of he had all of the data, all of the knowledge, and he still wanted to go back out there, even though his squadron, I think, only had 3 or 4 planes left. He still wanted to take those 3 or 4 planes out and see what they could do, which is pretty heroic. It's impressive stuff, what they did. Mason, go ahead.
commenting on the if you would rather want to be a pilot, knowing the odds, I think that I'd still rather be a pilot than like a front lines guy. Front lines guy, it would just be so hard. Pilot, it would be really fun to fly a plane and have that much control, but it would also be, I mean, it'd be really scary going up at the aircraft carriers and all the flak is shooting around everywhere, and you know you probably won't survive. But I still think it would be really, really fun. Funner than a front lines person.
I I think that's a pretty compelling argument. I think that you sold me on it. I think because to an extent, I mean, a lot of it's luck, but I think if I were a very skilled pilot, I would probably think I'll just get out of whatever situation I'm in. I can figure it out a way. Like my skill will overcome whatever challenges I run into. So I think that probably a lot of them had a similar attitude of, I want to be in control. I want to be flying the plane. Um, and so then, I mean, flak, I could avoid it, right? I don't know how hard that would be, but I think you're right. I agree with you. What else do you guys think? What impressed you the most of the Battle of Midway? What stands out to you as the something you learned that really caught your attention? Harrison, go ahead.
Um, One thing I've kind of appreciated about some of the World War II books I've read just alone and what we've read is that a lot of soldiers have been kind of like, you guys are all acting like I'm the big hero, but really it was the people who died to get me to there. Um, and that's kind of what I would think of as the pilot. It was like, so many pilots died just so one could land a bomb. Like, that is just crazy. That's it. They're the real heroes of this entire encounter. The people who like died to get them to where they needed to go, and I just think that's really cool.
Absolutely. And that's a huge part of why we study history too, is to honor those people who gave it. I mean, we're remembering them, right? And we're by learning about them, by learning these stories, learning what they went through, it's a way of showing gratitude to the people who have gone before us, to, you know, give them our respect, to give them our thoughts and just admiration, I think is that's why history is so inspiring to me. Just to learn the stories of what people went through, so that I could have all of the comforts that I have today. Which I agree. And you'll see, we start reading Flags of Our Fathers. That is what Harrison just said is really the biggest motivation for why the author wrote a book. He was not an author. His father was one of the flag raisers, and his father had written a letter home a couple of days after raising the flag on Iwo Jima, and said that that was the happiest moment of his life. And the author then says, but my dad never talked about it. My dad never told me about it. He only ever talked about Iwo Jima to his mom one time. And it was on his first day after he returned home. And it was like 5 or 6 minutes just over dinner of, oh, yeah, I was at Iwo Jima and this is what happened. But it was largely this huge event that he received so much recognition for, but he ignored it, never told his kids about it. And so the author was wondering, why didn't my dad like soak in this fame? Why didn't he talk about it? If it was the happiest moment of his life, why didn't he ever tell us about it? And he sort of comes to the conclusion that his dad doesn't want to be viewed as a hero because his father views the heroes as the boys who didn't come home, just like what Harrison was saying. And so that is a huge theme of the book that we're going to be reading. And I think it's important for us to all remember that too. I mean, the guys who did come home are heroes also. But so many people gave their lives so that they could land a bomb, right? So that they could push the enemy back a little bit. And they all were doing it for our country, doing it for their brothers that were in the foxholes with them. It's just really inspiring stuff. And I think it's important for us to learn about them in history classes like this, I think that's a way of showing our gratitude for their sacrifice by remembering them and honoring them in their story. So thank you for bringing that up. Lincoln, go ahead.
All right, we're good. I thought it was interesting how so many of the squadrons that were able to actually find the enemy found them only because they're willing to go over the point of no return, whether it be from fuel or mostly from fuel. But um, it it was interesting how there were just so many of them who decided, all right, fine, let's just keep going. We're all the way out here. We may as well. Not lots made it back, but more made it back than logistically should have. And it just I'm wondering if like the hand of providence kind of shoved them on that last little stretch to and if God kind of just, all right, you made that sacrifice, let's get you back to that carrier. I just thought it was incredible how they were willing to do that.
Absolutely. And I think he probably did. I think that there was a lot of help received. I think even on both sides, just people that are good people doing good things. I think that God was helping a lot of people be protected. That's cool. I also thought it was interesting. Like I really appreciated, and it wasn't just the Americans that were risking it all for their country, right? Risking it all for their honor. The main, and I think it's Tamanaga, but that's probably wrong. The main pilot, the main bomber pilot for the Japanese, he knew he had a leak in his fuel line. And he left his aircraft. I mean, before he left, everyone sort of knew. Like they shook hands, like, you're not coming back. And everyone sort of knew it. And he just went and did his duty. And to the last moment, um, kept willing his plane forward until he could put his torpedo in the water. And he missed, thankfully for us, right? But just so much honor and pride. It's just remarkable the situations that these ordinary people like you and I making these extraordinary decisions and these heroic things in that moment. It's so inspiring. It's so interesting and fun to read about these things. All right, we'll move on. According to my research, what did you guys find out that was interesting to you as you were reading? What was something that you dug into or thought was a little bit unexpected? Go ahead, Lincoln.
Well, so I wasn't able to technically do according to my research for this week because I've been with family. But I think it was last week. I got curious. I'm like, wait, what about the other two aircraft carriers, the Kido Butai? What technically happened to them? And I learned that they both actually sunk too. I think I don't remember where, but I think one sunk around the Solomon Islands, and the other sunk in the Philippine Battle of the Philippine Sea, I believe. So that's just an interesting thing I thought to look up in just one of my aircraft carrier books.
Nice. Yeah, I don't remember the exact details either, but it's interesting how the power shifted. They were so powerful. And then you lose a few aircraft carriers, and then suddenly that is really hard for them to maintain that, to keep up that power. And from then on, from this point on, they're on the defense. They're just trying to hold out long enough. The idea in the first place was we'll capture all of this land. And then as America starts making their way toward Japan, they'll sort of die out like a wave going up a beach, right? So it comes in real strong, but then as it gets closer to the shore, it just eventually dies out. And their hope was that they would die out and they would lose momentum before they got to the mainland, but then they would be in a place where they could negotiate different deals that would benefit Japan. And so they're just, from this point on, they're trying to defend as strongly as they can to kind of hope the Americans lose their momentum. The problem was, and this is something that they knew, Yamamoto knew from his time in America that once you get that military might, that production from the American manufacturing, they're only going to gain momentum. They're not going to slow down. And we see that. We'll see that. Harrison, was your hand up? Somebody's was. I can't remember, but it's no longer up.
I accidentally clicked mine. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. So, according to my research, about 145 to 150 U.S. planes were lost in the Battle of Midway. What did you guys think? And maybe it will be a little bit more of a summary in the next chapter. What did you think about the American strategy of once we have people like Thatch, like pilots who figure something out, the Americans oftentimes would pull those people back and have them start instructing other people. Meanwhile, the Japanese, once they have their heroes, they just keep flying them and flying them and flying them. And so one problem that the Japanese will run into, and they're starting to, beginning with Midway, is that they start running out of talent. They began the war with maybe the most experienced, I guess at least in the Pacific. I don't know if they had more experience than the Germans, but the most experienced Air Force and the most experienced pilots. Yet as they die, they're not really replacing them with experienced people, whereas the Americans pull their experienced people back and start having them train others. So the new trainees, the new recruits are getting better teaching, better training as they're coming up and they're learning the new techniques. So they're sort of creating this knowledge base where you can just be smarter on day one when you're out in the Pacific versus the Japanese where they're just brand new. So as you read this next week in this next chapter, think about that. Why would that make a difference? Why would it be good to pull back some of your best fighters and have them train others how to do it versus just letting them continue to go and do their thing? That's just something interesting to think about as you read. Anything else that stood out to you guys? Battle of Midway. Had you heard about this battle before?
I think it was crazy, like I guess how the Japanese and the Americans just kept hurling each other, just kept hurling themselves at each other, just kept doing it, hit and going back and forth. I don't know. They just kept going, even though it was it was a super long fight, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a tiny island like Midway.
Right. Totally teeny, but so important because it's in the middle and it would be a nice stopping place to be able to fuel up an airplane and then go the next. So if you have the next island beyond Midway, you can go to Hawaii, fill up, go to Midway, fill up with gas, go to the next place, fill up, and you don't need an aircraft carrier to do it. So it's super important, but it's such small spaces that have the only significance is that they need it for this island hopping campaign. And so you'll watch this story about Guadalcanal, and the battle lasted so long. It's just a small island. Iwo Jima, super intense battle. So many people die. And it's just this small volcanic island. It's so crazy how long they fought and the conditions that they fight in these tropic, stormy, always wet, always humid, mosquitoes everywhere. It just really terrible conditions. And they're there for weeks and weeks and weeks. I mean, we learned a little bit about it when we were reading the Code Talkers, right? Just some of the conditions that they had to endure where they were just, their feet were wet for months at a time. And just, it's so crazy, like you're saying, that they just keep slogging back and forth over these small islands in the Pacific, but they matter so much for the whole outcome. It's just crazy. And we're going to get into a little bit more of that in the next few weeks. Harrison, go ahead.
I think Midway showed the problem with the Kudo Butai. Um, it's because if you have all these aircraft carriers in a very short distance, one battle you could go from this strong nation to this weak nation, like you're saying. Um, it's kind of like you're just you're throwing everything in to your one force, so you better hope your one force can beat everybody. Um, and I think that's a very Japanese thing to do because, like on their home island, Japan's not very good. I mean, not very good, not very big. Um, so all they need is to have a really strong force, really well trained fighters, and they'll be able to move their well trained fighters all around their island. And that was one of the problems. Once they got too big, they just needed more men, and um, they needed to spread out a little bit more.
Yeah, and they lacked a lot of the resources, right? I mean, that's one of their motivations
Yeah.
for the war in the first place, was they didn't have enough of their own stuff. They didn't have enough of their own resources, their own fuel. They needed to go out and take over places so that they could get those resources. Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's interesting. Like they were throwing all that they had into this battle, and so were we. And just a few different decisions, a few different things that didn't go our way, and it could have been the exact opposite. I mean, there is a chance that we would have been without aircraft carriers in the Pacific for a little while. I mean, we have the manufacturing power, we would replace them, but it would have been a huge loss for a long time. Maybe they could have taken Hawaii. I don't know. I don't know what would have happened, but I think if I were them, I'm not sure how I would have done anything different, except maybe tried to have better intelligence. But how do you try to do that? I think they were doing the best they could. Just
Treat your
crazy.
prisoners better.
Say that again.
Treat their prisoners better. That's what I would do.
They didn't treat their prisoners very good, did they? And when part of the unbroken story that we'll get to in the last book of our year is, I mean, the reason it's unbroken is because he's in a prisoner camp and he's unbroken. Like they don't break him. It's pretty brutal conditions. We'll read about that too.
Sounds like a good book.
It is an amazing book. So inspiring, I think. Louis Zamperini. Remember that. We'll start reading about him. So that's it for today. So for next week, I'll post the readings. We'll finish the Battle of Midway. We're going to start with the flags of our fathers. It's really going to just take us up to kind of starts giving an overview of the Pacific Theater, kind of talks a little bit about Midway, talks a little bit about Guadalcanal, kind of trying to build up to where they get to Iwo Jima. And so that's why we'll have our supplemental content be on the Battle of Guadalcanal, so that we can fill in that gap that's left in between the two books that we're reading on this stuff. So I'll post the supplemental content shortly, but that's it for today, you guys. Thanks for the great discussion. Thanks for all your work. Thank you for posting in the Mighty Networks app. I really am impressed. You guys always bring your A game, so thank you for that. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you guys next time.